Welcome back to the Pro Series Podcast. This is episode 160, and today's guest is Matt McCarthy. Matt is a business and transformation coach. We kind of talk about from small businesses to corporate world, how to get your business up and running, how to transform mindset into entrepreneurial thinking. It is a great episode for anybody who is running a small business out there. But before we get into this episode, please like, subscribe, and review the Pro Series Podcast on wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, I hope you enjoy episode 160 with Matt McCarthy. Matt, thank you so much for hopping on the Pro Series podcast today. Excited to talk to you about your expertise and your professional career.
Eric, thanks so much for having me. This is great.
Yeah, and I'm glad we had that discussion. Was it a month ago or 2 months ago at this point?
Oh,
Can't even remember. The summer just went by so fast. But I appreciate that, and we had some connections there with your wife in the NKBA and all kinds of stuff. It's just such a small world. Once you start getting talking about just what you do in life, how well you're connected you are with people that you don't even really know.
yeah, definitely. That was surprising.
Yeah. Well, I want to first start off and kind of give an introduction of you. And then I want you to kind of start from the beginning. Like, where did your career start? Did you go to college? Did you go to a technical school? What was Matt's original life goal for career wise?
So I started out in a completely different world. Um, my original intention was to be a musician.
Oh,
My undergrad was, I was one class short of jazz studies as a major. So I ended up with a music major from a state school. And I was deeply passionate about music and was actually really purposeful about it too. I had every intention of using music as a Christian ministry
mm,
opportunity.
okay.
That was my goal from, I would say, roughly 14 until I ended up shifting gears. So that's where the story gets a little bit more interesting.
Okay. Well, how did that change?
Well, my first child was on the way. I
Okay.
had very little experience actually earning enough money to support a household.
Mm,
And music, I had actually just finished college, gotten married the year before, and I didn't know what I was doing in the world of personal finance. So I ended up getting a job and then another job. Um, I started out trying to sell insurance. That
mm.
didn't work out too well for me. So a few weeks later, I was uh, job hunting. Yeah, it's that sort of story at the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Um, the second job was service advising for a tire store. So basically, people want their car fixed. I would write it up. I didn't even get
Mm,
my hands dirty. I took one more foray into the music world at that point and tried to start a concert promotion business.
mm,
Um, I was not very receptive to advice, and I really did not know enough of what I was doing and lost my shirt. Um, so from there, I took a job with a car rental agency. It was, it was okay. Um, and then I took another job. Don't you like all these leapfrog?
yeah.
Took another job, which happened to be with a wireless carrier, which turned out to be my first foray into anything technical. And with that job, I started doing little side projects and ended up finding another company where I would be installing computer networks.
Mm,
I had a little bit of experience, and that was just enough for them. So that started me on I'll say 5 or 6 year career that was basically pure IT.
mhm.
Help desk, systems administration, network administration. Um, I was good at it. It wasn't terribly fulfilling, but it paid well. And this was also kind of in the late '90s, where IT was a hot career to be in.
Yeah.
So I found that it worked out well for me for a while.
Okay. So
Yeah.
so I always have people on this podcast, and magically they're one thing they have in common is they have a passion, or they find their passion later on in life. And you kind of had that music passion early on. Is that still something you do side gig wise, or is it something that you want to do maybe once you retire, or is it something, or did you just completely lose interest in it when you left that field?
I've gone through ebbs and flows with that.
Okay.
So I've played on the side periodically. I haven't been much lately. It's of interest, but not necessarily where I would do a lot of it post retirement, for example. It's um it's still interesting to me, but
Hmm.
I would say I'm not, deeply passionate about it anymore.
Do you think it's because the career didn't work out, or do you think it's just because you grown, you more matured, you just completely just grown out of that interest?
I think it's a combination of those and maybe a couple of other factors, but
Okay.
uh,
Yeah, and then with all your side gigs you mentioned with all your other jobs you had, are the side gigs something that you're doing right now?
so um, right now my business life is very complicated
Okay.
because of side gigs. So
Okay.
we'll start with currently I run my own consulting organization, but
Mhm.
it's primarily just me. Um, and I have one main client. I take on other side clients, and largely in the area of business transformation. Sometimes, well, it's basically anything that deals with, I like to call it the intersection of people, process, and technology.
Okay.
So there's that. I also have a small real estate investing business.
Mm.
I do coaching. Um, I'm actually looking at investing in other assets that can be used as rentals, such as a yacht. Um,
Okay.
that's still off in the future, but it's a good both business and tax opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. Let's
So
let's let's get into your coaching.
yeah,
So when you're going to coaching, is it life coaching, business coaching? What are you getting into?
yeah. I guess out of those, life coaching would be kind of the closest.
Okay.
What it specifically deals with is people who have gone through developmental trauma. That's generally trauma that occurs, depends on which experts you listen to, but usually before the age of 5. Some people will say
Mhm.
all the way up to age 25, where you're really going through formative years and any trauma you experience, its effects are magnified. So
Oh yeah.
working with people who have experienced that and helping them, ideally helping them find fulfillment.
Mhm.
Um, but even if it's a step back, helping them find ways to reach their goals. And I'm implying that the two aren't necessarily the same:
Mhm.
fulfillment and reaching your goals.
Okay. And then when does it so you helping businesses as well, trying to get their priorities straight and figure out like where those issues lie, and what a lot of these issues that I've talked about many times on this podcast of they stem, like what you said, from your childhood or you growing up, and you're kind of putting it out onto your business, and it's kind of causing you not to grow. Or there's a business owner that only is relying on the money or only focusing on the money. Are you helping out companies doing that as well?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of writing on that topic, and it's a I like to call it measuring your mission.
Mm.
So many companies, and I've worked with companies, everything from Fortune 500 to tiny companies and startups. Um, the vast majority measure everything based on their financials.
Mhm.
We're trained to do that. That's core business school
Yeah.
curriculum. For larger companies, they're mandated to do so. If, say, they're a public company, um, they are judged based on their financials.
Yeah.
Uh, but many companies came to be because their founders wanted to accomplish something, and the money was sure, it's part of it, has to be part of it, or else you go out of business. But their main passion was some other element, some other thing that they wanted to give to the world, serve the world with a service or product that would be super helpful to people.
Yeah.
And yet, if you're measuring everything based on your success financially, you're not necessarily promoting what you were passionate about, or what purpose your company was founded around.
Yeah.
So there are ways of developing purpose-based metrics that, if those are put first, believe it or not, companies that put those first actually tend to perform better financially, because really they know where their North Star is.
Hmm. You hear that a lot with even like big companies like that. Like Apple is, if Steve Jobs could see his company now, would he be happy? Or would Walt Disney be happy with the way Disney is as a whole now? Would he be happy
Mhm.
about that? And a lot of people don't know the answer to that when they're in the corporate world, because once you hit that corporate world cloud or whatever you want to call it, the umbrella,
Mhm.
mentality just completely changes. And like you said, they only care about driving money, or they're prioritizing something completely wrong, or something that's completely off topic that completely gets them away from that purpose that was
Yep.
created them and what made them the company they are.
The interesting part is, once you get mature shareholders involved, whether you're a public company or you have, say, institutional investors, or funds, things like that that are investing, um, there's there's definitely a big shift in terms of how money is measured.
Hmm.
In fact, public companies are mandated, or at least U.S. public companies are mandated by the Securities and Exchange Commission, to put increasing shareholder value first. So any company that tries to put something else as a higher priority than that can be subject to lawsuits and even sanctions by the SEC.
Mm.
So there's a real driver towards putting finances in the center.
Hmm.
And I think that is pervasive throughout our culture,
Yeah.
which is just, to me, is hugely problematic.
Oh, definitely is. You kind of see both sides sometimes, because if they're not making sales, they can't pay the employees, or vice versa. But the purpose is a huge thing. How do you go into these companies, or these even Fortune 500 companies, with a lot of the people that are in charge have some ego to them, or they're the owners, they're the ones that created the company, so it's like their baby to them. How do you go in there and help them change something that they've been doing for years, or tell them something that they've been doing wrong? Because I feel like
Yeah.
that'd be very hard.
It is challenging, and I'll go straight out. If I'm working within a public company,
Uh-huh.
it's generally not along the measuring your mission vein. It's doing some functional support that I can help them with. That's purely bringing continued revenue into the company,
Mhm.
which goes against the measuring your mission type of mindset. But if I'm going into a smaller company, and when I say small, let's call it small, medium, privately held company, um, I really need to approach it from, what was your original vision? Like the question you asked me at the beginning, where did you start out trying to, on your career?
Mhm.
Why did you start the business? What was it that you were trying to do? And as I'm talking with these executives or owners, and if the story does not, or comes out that, well, we just thought it would be a great way to make money, that's not a good client for me, because that's going to be such a tall mountain to climb to get them to where they see purpose as the center of their company.
Mhm.
But if the origin story comes out that, look, we developed this product, and this product was something that we thought would be super helpful
Mhm.
XYZ way. I'll give you an example. This is not one of my clients, but the shoes Toms, you're
Yeah.
familiar.
Mhm.
You buy a pair, they donate a pair of shoes to someone in need, generally in a third world country.
Yeah.
Bombas is another company like that. That's that's a company where their purpose wasn't necessarily about the product that they're selling, but their purpose was a passion for people who were without.
Mhm.
And by getting people to buy the same thing other people are without, they're
Yeah.
able to donate to those who are without.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of purpose driven company that I like to work with, who I can come in and say, what was your original vision? Okay. If it's Tom's, again, for example, are we measuring your financials? Well, we're watching your profit and loss and cash flow and balance sheets so that we make sure you can stay in business. But what's more important? How many pairs of shoes have been donated to people who could not afford them? How many lives have been touched through this?
Mhm.
And getting them to focus on that and communicate that throughout their organization, through any investors, any customers, anyone else who may be a stakeholder to that company,
Yeah.
the general public. And in doing that, by exposing it to their customers, well, that generates revenue. That's great. By exposing it to their employees, it instills that passion in their employees. Oh my gosh, I'm here and we're doing something great.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
those are some examples of, they're soft examples, but of how those metrics can drive the companies to perform better.
Oh, yeah, and I think the main reason why Bombas and Tom's does so well is their purpose, and I think there's some dedicated customers out there,
Yeah.
especially I haven't heard much about Tom's in a while, but Bombas, there's people that are diehard Bombas fans,
Yeah.
and strictly for the purpose.
Yeah. And they were able to even take it beyond just socks where they started to now
Yeah.
various other types of undergarments and whatever is in demand uh, with general customers and in need of people who are less fortunate.
Yeah, and that's what you want as a company. You want a diehard fan. You don't want someone to just come and buy it when they need it. A lot of those Bombas fans probably don't need, or a good one is I don't know their purpose right now, but Stanley Cups. I
Hmm.
don't know if they have a purpose or whatever their purpose is, but every single time in a new color jobs, people have to have them because they're just so dedicated to it. Or Apple, how people have to have that new iPhone.
Hmm.
And that's kind of what Bombas is. Like as soon as they drop something, these diehard people are wanting it. And that's that revenue that you're going to constantly get every year. You can rely on those people because they rely on your purpose and they rely on your product.
Yeah. Another great example is Patagonia.
Oh yeah.
Their passion is for the environment.
Hmm.
Um,
It's a good one.
think what you want about environmentalists, but they're very passionate about people getting outside. They're also passionate about people being more conscious about their expenditures. And in fact, in one ad campaign, they were running full page print ads in magazines, this is dating me a little bit, but saying, don't buy our jackets unless you absolutely need one.
Oh really?
Yeah, they
Huh.
literally said that. And one, it gets people to think, look, what am I consuming that I don't necessarily need to? But two, look, if I need a new jacket and it needs to be rugged enough to go out where I go,
Hmm.
I'm going to go with a conscientious company like that
Yeah.
rather than supporting whoever else that I don't know, what they think.
Yeah. So if you're talking to someone, and I don't know if you do this or not, there are a lot of people on this listen to the podcast are starting their own company or they're jumping board to start their own company. What would you give advice wise to those starting their own company to get on the right foot before they start and get all these bad habits and maybe figure out their purpose or writing down their purpose so they don't forget?
Yeah. So honestly, the first thing I would suggest, and I think I implied this earlier, if you're going into business just to make cash, spend some time thinking about your purpose.
Yeah.
It's important to us individually, and it's important for us culturally to have companies that really stand for things
Hmm.
more than just money.
Yeah.
Now, from a business sense um, mindset, it's that's not the only thing that you have to do. But I think that gives you a great foundation. It's also going to help in your marketing and motivating new employees. It's going to help in so many ways by having a purpose.
Hmm.
But it's also going to help you get up in the morning and realize, hey, I'm doing something good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Matt, I want to finish on the corporate world part of this. I mean, we talked about businesses, and I think corporate kind of gets stuck in this weird cloud where they all have to do the same thing. And if the other one's not doing it, they have to jump on board. What is your experience with that? Because you've worked with some Fortune 500 companies and people in the corporate world. How does that differ from all these other businesses that are maybe, privately owned or smaller businesses, and how difficult it is it to change them because of how many people are underneath them?
Yeah, so that's a huge point. I think of trying to change culture within a large corporation or trying to change anything is like turning an aircraft carrier.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's the ability to effectively communicate within an organization of that size and to keep everybody on the same goal and target. It's such a huge effort,
yeah,
and it just doesn't happen. Plus, once you get past a certain size, you're starting to get competing priorities among individuals, particularly in levels of leadership, to where some departments may get insulated. Others are very interested in working with the rest of the company. But if you get one insulated department and they all have to work together, you're going to run into issues performance wise.
yeah,
However, you have enough name recognition, you have enough customer base, even if it's churning, that you're able to still move forward like a steamroller. Here I go with more heavy equipment. Um, it's hard to turn a steamroller as well, just for example, but
hmm,
you're able to keep going. You can go for another 10 or 20 years, unless something disastrous happens. But you're losing market share, you're losing interest, you're also running afoul of the rest of the stakeholders, meaning the general public, by producing things that are not beneficial for uh, our world, for the people.
yeah. I like how you say that about turning a plane, because I worked for corporate world, and I'm not going to say my opinion on like where I was working and everything, but you hear it so many times where multiple people in one big business that they work for, and one person's in a completely different department. They say how toxic it is, and the other department is they love it and it's awesome, and they're truly living by the purpose and the business, what the business is trying to preach to everybody, and the other
Mhm.
one's completely opposite. And I feel like that's more common than the others, but there's really it's that's very hard as a CEO of a huge corporation to be able to hold all that leadership to make sure that every single person is living, breathing, sleeping that purpose that you're trying to preach down to them.
Yeah. Well, and I think even having the interest at that level
Yeah.
of, right, going back to the point that we were on before, their interest is in the financial results, and particularly in their own financial results. If you look at the pay packages of CEOs in, say, the Fortune 100, they're astronomical. They, in a few cases, they can exceed $100 million in a year,
Hmm.
and many are in the tens of millions.
Yeah.
And if you look at what they do to get there through furloughs and layoffs and shady business practices,
Mhm.
and like you, I will not name my clients. In fact, I don't anywhere name my clients, because in some cases they fall into this case. In some cases, they fall into completely the other um, purpose-driven, very conscious organizations.
Hmm.
But there are enough of them that are driven by those financial results that as long as they keep that ship going, keep
Hmm.
it afloat, they're good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Matt, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. I want to end with where people could find you on social media, LinkedIn, or if you have a website, or just where anybody could reach out.
Yeah, website's being revamped, but I definitely welcome you to check out my LinkedIn. Maybe you can link it for me
I
on
will,
show notes.
definitely.
Um, I'm starting to develop something on Instagram. Yeah, a little behind the game. At Questful Life is
Okay.
the handle. Those are some great places to reach me. If you're interested in having me speak, you can reach me directly. Just email info@questful.life. I'd love to hear from you.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll have everything in the captions for the podcast and the social media links.
All right.
Awesome, Matt. Well, thank you again for hopping on the Pro Series podcast.
Eric, my honor. Thanks for having me.